Hello, it's Mrs. Duncan, your Humanities 101 online instructor. We are in Unit 3, which we are starting our what we call genres, the actual art categories. This week in Unit 3 in Chapter 4. And so you were supposed to have read Chapter 4, and this is a little video kind of to make sure you understand the concepts. And so we're going to look at some of those elements. Let's kind of preview our outline though and our objectives. So first of all, you should be able to discuss the media of painting, the elements and composition of painting, the characteristics of painting, and be able to discuss the works of art that are talked about in the chapter. So I'm going to focus mostly on the elements of painting. You need to look at the examples on the media. Media is what, type of material did they use, whether they used tempera or fresco or oil or watercolor, acrylic, and there are some mixed medias. So those are in your book, and there's examples and definitions, and those will be on the quiz. What I wanted to kind of go over with you in this video is a little bit closer look at the elements of painting: line, color, texture primarily. And I do this through this little visual that I have. So let's take a look here. Let's take a look first at line, because when you talk about a painting or a piece of art, line is one of the things that we're looking for. And what do we mean by line? Just basically, it's a series of adjacent points, that are connected, kind of like, maybe you learned in geometry class. Another way to put it is it's a point in motion. When you have other lines that they join up to, then you have a shape. And of course you recognize this as a rectangle, but that's, a series of lines that join. We're just taking the very basic elements. When you add more lines and they overlap, it creates the illusion of space. And again, it's illusion, and it gives it that three-dimensional quality. And if you were looking through in your chapter, you'll notice some of the early artwork is very flat, not very three-dimensional, and they didn't understand this illusion of space until later, and really get into the Renaissance and you get that three-dimensional quality. So it's their use of line that distinguishes that. Now you can still perceive line, and from our previous chapters, art a lot is about perception, because obviously it's not the actual thing, but it's a presentation of the thing, and or the concept, and we perceive it according to how the artist, renders it. So they can do it through a mark, or they can create the illusion of it. You can see in this art piece that it connects the elements together, and this is very much centered on line, even though it has color. Line can also be used to separate and divide, kind of delineate, see where something begins and something ends. Most often we think of the function of line as describing, so we can visualize it. See, we see the outline of what we perceive and understand as a guitar. We recognize that by the shape of the line. Probably like maybe a bed, because of looks like the quilted part of a bedspread, a doorway, looks like the entrance into a bathroom, a counter, maybe some kind of a chair or sofa. So it's through that line that we can kind of distinguish items, and when we have a very realistic expectation of our perception, we want it to be clear like that. Well, let's move on and talk about shape. Okay, so the lines combine to create shape, and there's different kinds of shape. You have the rectilinear, geometric, hard, sharp, angular. You can see distinctive and straight edges. very geometric, and if you notice, some of the artists really emphasize that to the point where they whatever they're depicting in art doesn't look exactly the way it appears in life, where it's more rounded. They emphasize the geometrics. You see that in the cubists such as Picasso. Biomorphic, these take on that curving or twisted shape that's more natural, okay, or to a soft flowing view, if it seems more like things actually appear. You have what's called objective shape. It may not look like the original, but it takes the form on a similar structure. So it represents an object in the real world. When we do a lot of that with cartoons, because they don't look exactly, like the real thing, but we recognize it. Then you have the non-objective, makes no reference to objects in the real world, has no recognizable subject matter. It can include organic and geometric shapes, but it's just like this looks like fragments of tile or something, and sometimes we resist artwork like that because we want to perceive something specific, and that's a personal taste thing, but there's something that the artist is putting together that makes it, perhaps, as we've talked about or if you've read, what makes it a work of art. But we want to be able just to see about the different types of shape. Texture is a big one. The actual texture refers to the qualities of a surface that if you were there, you would be able to experience through the sense of touch. But to be honest, there are very few really good paintings. I mean, they're not going to let you touch them. They're not going to let you walk up and touch the Mona Lisa, for example, or Picasso's Guernica. But you can perceive through the appearance and look at the different types of textures and what they might feel like. And of course, these might also have smell, but we're looking at the texture. And it's a perception. You might actually touch it and it not actually have that. It may only be a presentation, maybe a faux, right? Like faux painting, the appearance of that texture. So some of it's tactile, which means by the very actual, waiting for these to come up, actual materials they used. There would be something you could actually touch that could be in there, especially like on sculpture, but certain things too. And some of it's just the perception, of it. And this would kind of take on, if we're three-dimensional, more of a, a sculpture. But here you have implied texture through the movement of lines. So even line can work into it. And if you think about what that would look like, a massive string, colored string, what that might feel like, or wires, then you can understand a little bit more of that physical presence. You can imagine what that might feel like. Not sure what that is, but I can definitely perceive some texture, from it. And that just enhances kind of our perception. Instead of it being simply all visual, the visual texture can also kind of imply some kind of physical experience with the material and with the objects. Color, of course, is a favorite. And you have your primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Let's kind of go to that a little bit. It talks a little bit earlier about how we perceive color. It's only with light. If the lights are off in a room, if it's dim, you can perceive shapes, but you don't see what color they are. You may have had color theory before. It doesn't go into this a lot in the book, but it's important to understand there are three primary basic colors, and it's red, yellow, and blue. Okay, and hue is the term that corresponds to the color names. So that's the technical term for, is it blue, is it red, is it green, is it reddish green? And you see how we have combinations. So you take the yellow orange and you've got a primary plus another part of a primary, right? Mostly yellow, half red, and then you mix them equally. You've got orange, more red than yellow. You can see as you move around all these different colors: violet, blue violet, green, yellowish green, Um, then you get in, like, cayenne, or magenta, right? You've got you've got mixes, but they're all mixes of the primary colors. So that's kind of interesting to know when they can move those around. All right, intensity is just as you move from, look at the up in the center here, or something in the middle, kind of when you have two that are opposites like that, they kind of offset each other, and they don't mix, particularly well, because they cancel each other out. These are opposites. They're on opposite part of the wheel, color wheel. You've got value, and that is referring to how relatively light or dark it is. And so you can see this as I take down the value. It's still red, but all of a sudden it's gonna, it's not as bright, right? It's not, it's getting kind of almost washed out, and then eventually it loses all of its hue. It's because the value's gone. Um, let's do it with another color. Let's say green. Move that down. It's still perceptibly green. We get along here, and it's getting darker, like when we're taking the light out, right? And then it's not perceptibly anything. So value has to do with the lightness or darkness of a color. Dark red, bright red, light red. It's not necessarily making it pink, though. It's still, in its true value, it's its full tint, full color. Let's see if there's anything else. Warm and cool. This is kind of fun. I can take the sky, and I can decide if I want a warm sky, and then I can adjust that, palette there, and maybe because I want it to be like a sunrise, right? And I want my hills. Um, now, see, they're going to look a little weird, but I can create a lot of contrast that way if I want to. So this is predominantly a warm with contrasting cool, or it's going to let me change them. Yeah, there we go. Or I can keep the foreground, the hills and the trees kind of on the cool side, and decide I can make the sky. I want the sky to be kind of purpley in the morning, and my sun to be just like nighttime or something. So you can just change. You see the difference between the warm and the cool tones. Okay, so emotions attached. That's always something that's just weird, isn't it? Green at a stop sign. We're just kind of culturally conditioned, and that's the point here. Colors often have contradictory cultural associations. Red can symbolize danger and anger, but it can also be used to indicate joy or love. Yellow is the color of cowardice, also the color of a warm summer day. So when we're interpreting uh, a painting, an artwork, and they use color, we do respond emotionally, and yet what they intended to get out of us, that emotional response, sometimes, that's why it can be contradictory. So you have to look at context. Context is kind of, well, what, all the pieces together, and the line and the scene that's being depicted, to kind of put those together. So when you're analyzing art, you have to combine all the factors. Well, I hope what that did was give you a better understanding of how you understand line and color, hue and shape and texture and value. The principles of composition are a little less, it's harder to depict, and let me see if I've got anything on that. But we did talk about shape and perspective a little bit. Balance, gradation, the movement of that. Balance is going to have the equal things on each, think symmetrically and then asymmetrically. Symmetrical is you got the same on both sides, and asymmetrical is like a seesaw where it balances it out. It's not the same, but it balances out. Okay, well, that's a little video today for the elements of art. I hope that was helpful and interesting to you when you look at artwork, and particularly paintings, and understand how to perceive and at least be able to discuss them beyond just, oh, I liked it or I didn't like it, but to discuss the use of line. the shapes, the use of color, and the different tones and hues and how they come together to create an emotional response.